Heyo, Greg Branos here for the Coach Speak Index. We are ripping a Ball Mania 6 draft today on Underdog Fantasy, and we have a very special guest. He is a fantasy football analyst and an NFL draft analyst for ESPN. He is incredibly talented at both jobs and is a wellspring of positive energy, so his meteoric rise in this industry is no surprise to anyone. Field Yates, welcome.
It's good to be on here, my friend. Hope you're doing well. We were talking before the show about how we are on opposite coasts here, but I hope that it's just as awesome of a day out there where you are in LA as it is here in Connecticut. We've had a month-long spell of crap weather, so it's nice to finally have some 80-degree weather to enjoy by doing a best ball draft.
There we go. Hey, got to ask you real quick, what is up with that sea that's in the middle of Connecticut? Just a random silent sea right in Connecticut? What's up with that, man?
It's a good question. I got to ask somebody much smarter than me on that one, but it does not make a whole lot of sense. It's not pronounced. I often spell the state that I've now lived in for 5 years incorrectly as a result of that silent C. So as far as I'm concerned, we can spell it without that second C and be good.
Let's do it. Let's take it out. Extraneous C's. We don't need them. Just Manchester by the... There we go.
Hey, there we go. Love it.
All right, we're going to jump in a draft here, 30-second draft, Best Ball Mania on Underdog, waiting for 6 people. I will go ahead and share my screen.
All right.
Here. All right. On top of being a fantasy football analyst, you're also an NFL draft analyst for ESPN, as we mentioned up top. If tomorrow they said, Field, you can only do one of these 2 jobs, which one do you think you would pick?
Ooh, man, that's a great question, because this is kind of the one time of the year where I don't have a definitive answer. I don't want to make it seem like I'm not grateful for either of the opportunities, because these are the get-to jobs, right? You get to do these things. But during the fantasy football season, there's just so much energy and there's so much passion for fantasy sports that it's hard to imagine a world in which you aren't covering fantasy football in that month, especially leading up to the draft. But really, like, once we get to the finality of the draft order for the non-playoff teams, so early January, and then it picks up even more to the combine and post-free agency and, you know, pro days and things of that nature, it's hard to imagine not covering the NFL draft. It's a question that I'm going to plead the fifth on that one. I don't have a good answer. Like right now, I am still close enough to the 2025 NFL draft that the juices are flowing a little bit. However, I've done, I don't know, probably 25 mocks already for fantasy since the start of May. So the brain is definitely spinning into fantasy football mode right now as well.
How much of an advantage, because you're I imagine working constantly during NFL draft season, all the scouting, all the watching tape, all the people that you're speaking to about this rookie class. How much of an advantage do you feel that immersing yourself so much into this rookie class just prepares you for the fantasy season and what we can kind of expect from these rookies?
Well, I hope that it helps me a little bit more on the day 3 type players, right? Or even the non-day 1 players, because there's so much coverage of the draft leading up to the first round, and probably, I don't know, what, 80% of it, maybe more, is focused in on a very select number of players. You know, this past year, obviously, it was very Shedeur Sanders and other quarterback-heavy coverage. But, you know, you do find times where there's a dozen players or 15 players or 20 players that dominate the airwaves there. So on days 2 and 3, you hope that you have a bit more of an advantage because you're more familiar with, you know, Damian Martinez than most people are with a 7th-round pick going to the Seattle Seahawks. That being said, no matter how well you think you know the prospects, and no matter how good the landing spot seems on paper, we were reminded in an incredibly, incredibly disturbing way last year that the 4th overall pick in the draft, going to an Arizona Cardinals team that was bereft of wide receiver talent and basically had Trey McBride, and that was it, can still have a dud by fantasy purposes. And actually kind of a major dud last year for Marvin Harrison Jr. There's an advantage, but I always admit that, you know, some of the best draft picks that I have made in fantasy have been more a byproduct of guessing right as opposed to being more prepared than some of my opponents.
Okay. Yeah.
That's innate to what we do, though, right? I mean, I don't think anybody is sitting here that covers the fantasy, extensively that would pretend to know it all, right? I mean, some of our best picks have been the guys that we were least invested in during a given year. You just happen to pick that player in one league and he springs, and next thing you know, you've got a dominant force. So there's sometimes more art than science to the world of fantasy football.
It's really interesting with the day 3 picks at positions that were really deep, like this year with running back, because in previous years, like maybe some of these guys go day 2, your Cam Scadaboos, Bashal Tootin, those types of guys. We're actually one pick away here. And of our board, we have Puka Nacua, Malik. Okay, we're on the clock now. Puka's gone. Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas Jr., Nico Collins, Christian McCaffrey, Ashton Genty, Amon-Ra St. Brown at the top.
Man, pretty tempting on Brian Thomas Jr., isn't it? I don't know. I mean, I see recently, did Jamar go 1 overall, by the way? I missed that.
He did. Yeah.
He did. And did I see that you said you've done 43 and Jamar's gone first in all of them?
Pretty much, yeah.
Obviously, a little different in best ball than traditional drafting, but I will take Brian Thomas. Yes, sorry, I didn't mean to keep this. Yep. Good with it. My thought on oh man, it's missed our pick. All right. Well, hey, listen, BTJ, we got it. Okay, we snuck it in.
Yeah.
All right. I'll speed it up. My apologies there. My thought there on BTJ is that, like, by the end of last season, if you had told me based off how it looked that he was the guy that went 4th overall and not Marvin Harrison Jr. or Malik Neighbors who went 4th and 6th, the tape was certainly reflective of that. A lot of optimism around bringing Liam Cohen to this franchise. He has said, I know, and I've been following him through you. I've followed a lot of what he has said. Obviously, they drafted Travis Hunter, but make no mistake about it. Like, the offense is going to funnel through Brian Thomas Jr. The targets were just absurd late last season, and he was doing it with his backup quarterback too. So very optimistic about BTJ.
Yeah, absolutely. They've talked a lot about how he saw so much cloud coverage last year because there were really no other options, and they wanted to bring in another legitimate wide receiver threat. So, you know, it doesn't matter what side of the field these guys are on. Like, people now have to worry about Brian Thomas Jr. and Travis Hunter, and Brian Thomas Jr., a guy that they want to move around a lot. But all 3 of these receivers that they have, including De'Ami Brown, now have this versatility. Yeah, they really, really love De'Ami Brown, not just the intangible stuff, which is very big for general manager James Gladstone, but what he can do in the screen game, the vertical threat that he offers up top, which allows the other guys to eat even more in intermediate and short and screen game. I think this offense is going to be, well, Trevor Lawrence will definitely have the table set for.
Let me add some of the things that you just said there. By the way,
on the clock here, real quick.
Let's go. Oh yeah, I keep looking for Yates.
AJ Brown, T. Higgins, Derrick Henry, Devon Achane.
Man, is Achane too low hanging fruit? I mean, dude, like with Tua, like this is RB1 almost every single week. So I'm in on Achane, so we can get a little competitive balance. We're drafting only Florida players, by the way. We don't like state taxes on our roster, so we're drafting only Jaguars, Dolphins, and Buccaneers for the entirety of this draft. But just to go back to the Gladstone comments you're referring to, I'm not sure a phrase came up more in conversations with people around the league when we were trying to when they were trying to figure out what was going to happen. Obviously, this is a very unpredictable draft year, more than intangibly rich. Obviously, the trade from 5 to 2 took place on the clock, but what was essentially, there was no murmur of that until really the day of the draft. But so as people were imagining who would pick number 5 for the Jaguars, it was, assuming Travis Hunter was gone, it was who's the most intangibly rich player. So there was a lot of like Jalen Walker buzz. And he's like an off the charts kid on top of being a very good player as well. And it's funny how like one phrase, which could be used intentionally, maybe not intentionally, caught the attention of not just you, someone who does this all the time and is catching every phrase, but people around the NFL as well, as an aside.
Yes. I mean, they used it so much that they started using variations on it and some just kind of in fun. They were saying intangibly curious. As well.
What's the difference between intangibly curious and just curious? I'm curious on that question.
That's a great question. Yeah. I don't have the answer to it.
All right. As we get ready, we're a handful of picks away. Any direction your heart is telling you want to lean towards next?
I mean, probably. I mean, if Trey McBride is there at 32 where we pick, which he probably won't be, he would be a top target. Probably thinking another wide receiver here, although it is hard to pass up on third round Breece Hall.
What do you do with that guy this year? What do you think?
Man,
what have they been saying? What have they suggested to you based off what they have said about Breece?
Well, we got that big quote from head coach Aaron Glenn, who we don't have any data on, really. This is the tough thing with first-time head coaches. And he was saying that we want to utilize all three of these backs. We see it as we have a 1-2-3 punch. And, giving kind of this sense of maybe this would be a committee type situation. But when you look at the talent in that backfield, Braylon Allen, big bruising guy, not very efficient last season.
He wasn't, yeah.
And Isaiah Davis, I think, actually might be a better running back than Braylon Allen. But I mean, Breece Hall just head, shoulders, knees, and toes above both of these guys in that backfield. Like if you're a serious kind of common sense coach, like I think Aaron Glenn will be, I mean, you have to give so much of that work to just the best guy. They're talking about Garrett Wilson. We want to get him the ball as much as possible, right? He's one of our best players. Well, Breece Hall is one of your best players in that backfield. I got to imagine that they're going to give him a really nice workload.
And 2 years ago, so good. Yeah, and McBride is sitting there. If we get him, I say I'm happy to punch that ticket if he makes it to us.
Hey,
all right.
32, we get a Trey McBride. I don't mind falling behind a little bit at receiver when we get that kind of
We'll be all right.
ADP value. We'll be fine. We'll be fine.
We'll be all right. Because there's so many intriguing wide receiver upside plays, and they're just so. I mean, when I ask you which tight ends inspire confidence this year, not named, Trey McBride, Brock Bowers, George Kittle, who are the answers that come to mind for you?
I mean, it's just a huge chasm after those three guys. I mean, we're
probably two, and then like Kittle, like a couple round discount, in sort of traditional redraft leagues.
Yes,
based off the stuff that it's McBride and Bowers have been going like that round 2-3 turn frequently, especially Bowers for obvious reasons. And then like Kittle's getting like a couple round discount. It might end up being the best value out of those three.
For sure.
Then it's like, holy crap. Like, I'm sitting there and it's jarring to see Travis Kelce available, like pick 85. That's hasn't happened since his rookie season. And obviously then he wasn't even on the radar at all. It's wild.
Yeah. He was going early last year, and that was a guy who just a few years ago was going around the third overall pick, even in non-tight end premium. You'd see him go third on Underdog. For redraft, it's a much tougher situation, I feel, because you can obviously only play one guy in that tight end spot, where in best ball you can kind of cobble together a nice 3 tight end room with guys like let's say like Mark Andrews and then Tucker Kraft and then Jawan Johnson.
Sure. Yeah.
Just such a touchdown dependent position, and it's hard to kind of predict when they're going to score these touchdowns.
Yeah.
We will be coming up on the clock in a pick, and Travis Hunter is at the top if we want to double stack Jacksonville and just make a bet on this offense. DK Metcalf
plays in Florida, so far I have no issues with that. I would say DK or Travis Hunter is tickling my fancy more here. I'll let you break the tie if you have a preference.
Yeah, I think we go with Travis Hunter here.
Such an interesting one, right? Again, my brain always goes more towards just traditional redraft leagues as opposed to best ball. Where I was looking this, my colleague, my partner in crime, Daniel Dopp, and I were talking about this a couple of days ago. Where let's just say, and I don't, there's no specific number. It's impossible to say this far out, but let's imagine that Travis Hunter plays 65% of the snaps this year. Which, by the way, that's still a lot of snaps. Like 2/3 of the snaps on offense, if he's playing half or more on defense, like that's a crap load of snaps, right? You go back and check the players that were like, it was either 60 or 65, and forgive me for not recalling which one we use as the cutoff. But the only player below that list that you were like, okay, that was a legitimate fantasy starter was bad pun use here, Xavier Worthy. And that was because, he was playing whatever, 40% of the snaps for the first half of the year. And then Rashee Rice gets hurt. And then they find ways to use Xavier Worthy that are, far more useful for fantasy. It wasn't the, 60-yard bombs. It was the, the 6-yard throws that were basically extensions of the running game. So if Hunter does not play more than 65, 70% of the snaps in redraft leagues, like he's probably going to go too high. That's one of the early takeaways I've seen so far from doing, again, traditional redraft mocks.
Yeah, I feel pretty good about Travis Hunter getting a minimum 70% of offensive snaps. The way that they are talking about him, they want him to focus primarily on offense. The sense that I'm getting from everything that they're saying is that he'll be more he'll play defense more on like third downs, like really high leverage.
Gotta have a situation.
Downs and snaps. Like there's no need to play this guy on defense in a blowout, right? Yep. Blowout win, blowout loss. Like that just doesn't make any sense.
I agree.
And he's just such a big boon to your offense when he's out.
Coach too. Like, come on now. You think Cohen, by the way, is going to say, yeah, you know what? Like, you guys got this on defense. By the way, for those that are watching the stream, I want them to take a count. I'm up to 3 separate drinks here on the desk. I'm one of those people that always has a cup, a bottle, a different bottle. I got water, got the electrolytes, and then got the caffeine.
We are on. We're on the clock here. We're on the clock here. Calvin Ridley, Kenneth Walker are at the top here. RJ Harvey as well.
Yeah. Man, Walker's intriguing. Isn't RJ Harvey like pretty damn compelling here too? Like
he's very compelling.
We don't know this, but Sean Payton, who obviously last year we can make the pick. By the way, Harvey, I'm good with it. Sure. If you're good with it,
let's go Harvey. Yep.
Like the Broncos have a lot of backs, and last year Sean Payton was incapable of committing to one for more than like a quarter of a game. But if he does, behind what was ESPN's, by the way, number 1 run block win rate team, offensive line, number 1 pass block win rate team along the offensive line, it's like such a freaking unbelievable situation, right? Like,
it's a great setup.
If somebody takes that job by himself, holy crap! I was going to swear, but
you can swear. It's fun. People who are worried, like, don't be worried about Audric Estime. And especially if Sean Payton is saying stuff like don't pay attention to his player usage stuff. Okay. Pay attention to the fact that Audric Estime was a healthy scratch last year in the most important game of the season for the Denver Broncos. Pay attention to the fact that Jaleel McLaughlin is capped at 15, 20% of snaps per game. Look at how much the Broncos were publicly thirsting for a running back 1 before the NFL draft. Another thing that I think is an arrow up for RJ Harvey is the fact that the Jacksonville Jaguars were very, very interested in drafting RJ Harvey.
Sure.
And anytime James Gladstone is in on a player, I want to take notice of that because he has a very good track history going back to Puka Nacua and even further than that.
Yeah, totally. I was interested. I'll be interested to see what the Jaguars' backfield looks like. We can talk about that as we see those guys go off the board. I'm guessing they have not, but we're coming around the corner. It's a fast-moving class right here.
Yes, sir. They're all going in the triple digits right now.
So, yep.
Probably want to catch up
like 120. Go ahead.
Probably want to catch up here at receiver. Jerry Jeudy, Deebo Samuel, Jacoby Myers at the top of the board here. Brandon Ayuk as well.
I can't get intrigued by Myers. I'm least intrigued by. I think it's. Dude, Jeudy had some freaking gargantuan weeks last year that I'm not sure what the biggest impediments are this year. So I'm good with Jeudy if you want to go that direction.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think most people would think that the biggest impediments are just the offense as a whole and the quarterback situation. I would say let's maybe give.
Was it good last year? Like Jameis is fantasy friendly.
Yes, Jameis good for those guys. Flacco does like to sling it a little bit, but he's a little bit older. They do have 4 quarterbacks who aren't probably all really terrible. Like maybe out of these 4 guys, we find one who can function in this offense and run it the way that Kevin Stefanski would like to run it. Yeah, it's one of those offenses like the Colts where people have just automatically kind of buried them. Like don't really want any pieces of this offense. It's so foggy. Like I can't see into the future of what this offense will look like this year. So I'll just completely stay away from it. Yeah. But Jerry Jeudy, like you said, very, very good receiver and a guy who the Browns found a way to kind of unlock him with the way that they use him there. Totally. And everything that Stefanski has said is that they want to keep doing that. They want Jeudy to get a little bit better at his craft so they can do even more things with him, but they're completely happy with what he brings to the table for them right now. Got someone here in the chat field saying that you and the Fantasy Focus Pod helped him win his home league for the first time back in 2016. Huge thanks.
Shout out to the Fantasy Football Garage. Let's go, baby. Let's get another one this year.
Let's get a Maserati in that garage. couple mil will do the trick.
Nothing better than winning your home league. It's awesome. Bragging rights for a year.
Yeah. How many leagues are you in, and do you have a favorite one?
So 15, I think, last year. That includes Scott Fishbowl. Maybe it was, somewhere, call it between 14 to 16, somewhere in that range. It's funny. I have it's people always ask that same question. Yeah, is there a favorite one? We play in the War Room League in ESPN. This will be year, I think, 7 for me. It's a 16-teamer. Shefty is in it. Brewski's in it. Rex Ryan's in it. Jeff Darlington won it last year. Stephania Bell won it the year prior. There's a lot of our producers at ESPN, a lot of names that people know. And that's a lot of cachet. So I think probably I haven't won it my first, whatever it's been, 6-7 years. So I'd love to win it for obvious reasons. But it does feel like to me throughout the season, the teams that are just like humming along, you gravitate towards, right? We're back on the clock here.
Yeah. We're back on the clock. At the top here, we got Brandon Ayuk, Khalil Shakir, Darnell Mooney.
Yeah, Mooney is the guy that I had my eyes on there.
Beautiful. Been wanting to get even more of him. This was a guy who last year, man, they asked, I still remember this clip. They asked Raheem Morris about Darnell Mooney. And it was like Dan Campbell on Jameson Williams level kind of hype that just absolutely love this guy. And, people were worried about his past production and his metrics and not sure if it could really work in Atlanta. And man, we saw him recapture some of the magic that we saw in that one year that he had with Justin Fields in Chicago and looked really, really good.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, it's also, and this is here's me bringing the really important nuance that you can only get here on the Coach Speak Index show is Darnell Mooney is just really good too. He faded, his last year before he hit free agency, he faded, which was a partial byproduct of the fact that the offense he was in was just terrible, right? Justin Fields and him had that 1 year, but Justin's not the quarterback that I'm looking to elevate my wide receivers, right? That's just the truth, So Mooney just had the imperfect timing, but Atlanta was savvy enough to make the deal for 3 years. I think it was $40 million for Mooney, which people are like, damn, that's a lot of money for Mooney. A year into it, $13 million for a starting wide receiver too, who I think is capable enough that, if you plunked him in probably 5 or 6 offenses around the NFL, we're back on the clock. Jeez.
Yeah, back on the clock. Got an ADP value on Brandon Ayuk if we want to take him here.
Yeah, why the heck not, right? I have zero intel on when Ayuk could be back, but I mean, ACL tear in what? Was it October of last year?
Yeah, Jeff Mueller is an injury expert on Twitter who really value his opinion. He seems to think that Ayuk is headed in a pretty good direction, looking good right now from all video evidence. And when we're talking about, let's say it does take him until, week 4 to kind of either be on the field, or he's been on the field since the beginning of the season, but he's just kind of like trying to work back from the injury. Like in these bye weeks don't start until, I believe, week 5. So we have time here with these other guys in the wide receiver room that we have who can kind of usher him, or as somebody coined the phrase, a chaperone, right? To like kind of bring them along to where you need them to get at a certain point in the season. Just a very, very talented player. And this is something that happens in fantasy, to where, we get burned by a guy in the previous season, and no matter what the context was on it, like, we just can't get back in on them. Chris Olave going in the second round last year suffers the concussions. Now that doesn't really like take anything away from what he can do. That he's not losing the skills that he has. He's still going to be an excellent route runner. There is obviously the concern of, if he suffers another concussion, we don't know, that he'll be back on the field with full confidence and not be kind of scared of taking a hit. But that might be good if we see him, get down more, or get out of bounds, or whatever. But this is a guy who's just so incredibly talented. You look at Matt Harmon's reception perception. You just look at Chris Olave's tape in the NFL, like, very, very, very good wide receiver, and he's going in the 60s.
And that's crazy, man. There's a show that we'll do at some point during the preseason on Fantasy Focus. And again, different format here. But it's like the guys that, I don't know if it's like high variance players, boomer bust players, wide range of outcome players, whatever you want to call them. But it's a guy like Olave, right? There's a handful of running backs that fit in this category. The range of Breece Hall, Isaiah Pacheco, Travis Etienne, right? Like a year ago, those guys were all going, Hall was going, top 5. Pacheco was going like 13th. And Etienne was going what, like 25th maybe? Now, I've said earlier, I'm getting Pacheco like 120 consistently. So we're coming around the corner here once again. Any players that are, we need a quarterback, huh?
We will hear.
I like some of the options, though. We got some options still available on the board. I think you can really piece it together in best ball quarterback, because there's maybe 18 guys that I can talk myself into having some serious weekly upside.
Who would you like here? Luther Burden, Cam Scattaboo, Rashid Shaheed.
Shaheed's underlying metrics are really good. Like, they consistently surprise me. Like, just an awesome player who maybe we could be crestfallen by missed it. All right, Shaheed's our guy.
We got him.
Sorry, I got to stop talking through the pick. I just got to say we're taking Shaheed, and here's why. Sorry, never been I need to be a little less verbose. But yeah, Shaheed is he's such a talented player. Obviously, the knee injury sucked last year. Tyler Shuck, I think, will be fine enough for the purposes of fantasy football. Fine enough to make the players around him useful enough relative to cost.
Yeah, Tyler Shuck was kind of a polarizing prospect for a lot of people this draft season. What did you see from him?
Yeah, I mean, I had him 30. So him and Jackson Dart were right stacked behind each other, neck and neck, 35 and 36 on the overall big board for me by the time we got to the close of it. This is a hard thing to do because, our brain, we are subject to the human brain here as we get ready for another pick. But if he wasn't 25 and he was 22, I think the Shuck conversation would look a whole lot different. So not saying it's going to be, it's just a terrible, it's a bad situation he's in, right? Like, the offensive line is coming together, but still young, and I don't think good enough. I don't think this team's going to be very good this upcoming year, but I do think there's enough talent to keep Olave, if he's healthy, afloat, and Shaheed, if he's healthy, afloat.
Okay, so we're on the clock. There's a really nice ADP value on Justin Fields right now. If we want to take him.
Yep, let's do it. Let's rip. We can find one more later if we need to. Yep. Fields is an intoxicating one, isn't he?
He is. This is a team who wants to run the ball. Obviously, they want to use Justin Fields as a part of that. They upgraded their offensive line, drafting Armand Membu in the draft this season at, I believe, pick 7.
Pick 7.
And with a guy like Breece Hall, who's so explosive, that really opens up the run game when you have such a mobile quarterback there.
I try to encourage people to realize that there are 2 types of fantasy football players, meaning like the players on the field. There are full year guys and there are pocket guys. The full year guys, the Jamar Chases, Justin Jefferson, Saquon Barkley's the world, right? Like if you draft them first, second, third overall, you expect them to be in your lineup every week dominating, right? Then you got to address the parts of your roster where you can find a guy like Justin Fields who 2023 season had a month plus where he was the highest scoring player in all fantasy football. Right? It wasn't like, hey, he had 1 week where he had 37 and then followed it up with, 11 the following week. And over that 2-week stretch, he was quarterback 4. It was a month plus of Justin going ham. He's a pocket player though, right? Like, I don't know that in a redraft league, I'd say I'm taking Justin Fields and I feel certain he'll be the only starting quarterback I will use absent his bye week all year. That's just the reality of how our game works. Is you got to be prepared to have those guys who that pocket might not come till week 8 and it might last only until week 11. But that 4-week stretch where you're thin somewhere else, that you have that ace in the hole, could be the difference between best record in the league and first round bye or not making the playoffs at all.
Yes. Quick question that I have about, because you spent time as a scout for the Kansas City Chiefs. Yeah. Do scouts self-scout themselves? Like if you have a bad grade on a player, he ends up being a stud. Do you go back and evaluate that evaluation that you made, try to find out what went wrong in your process?
For sure. And I still hear about that from my scouting buddies all the time. Is just like, where did I miss on this player, right? I would say, and I don't, it's not a lot of scouts have like this big public forum where they can show how willing they are to learn from prior mistakes. But a lot of that conversation bubbles up during the season. Like, I just didn't see it on this player, or I was too optimistic on this player, and trying to figure out why. It tends to be 2 things that lead them astray. One is the person, right? You don't know what kind of person you're investing in, right? You draft a kid and then, this is less so the case with NIL now being upon us. But one of the questions I remember being one of the first dynamics discussed when I got into the world of scouting was, we just don't know what's going to happen when a kid goes from a 21-year-old college student to a 21-year-old millionaire overnight, right? 21-year-old me would have been tempted by a lot of stuff if I had $1 million at my disposal, right? Or the other thing is the situation, right? Like, there are guys who are so uniquely talented that they can be the rising tide, the Mahomes, the Allens, Lamars, right? But some quarterbacks in this league are like, Jared Goff might not be as good if he were playing in New Orleans. Like, I'm not sure the Saints are going to strike a lot of fear into people if they had Jared Goff and not Tyler Shuck, but he's awesome in Detroit because of circumstance. So scouts, I think, are always also studying like the person and the circumstance and how much the circumstance could dictate the evaluation as we get ready for yet another pick. This thing's flying, huh?
Yes, sir. How would you feel about grabbing Trevor Lawrence here, since we have Brian Thomas Jr. and Travis Hunter?
I would feel awesome because the Jaguars are about to win the Super Bowl this year. I don't actually mean that, but for the purposes of this, I mean it. What a polarizing player he is, huh?
Trevor Lawrence? Yeah. Definitely a guy who has the tool. I would like to see him not miss those deep shots as much as he has in the past. We can talk about, didn't have a ton of talent, scheme wasn't great, whatever. But when you have an open shot downfield to a player, I feel like he should be hitting those a little bit more than he has been. And maybe the biggest concern for him is his efficiency around in the red zone. Like, we've seen a lot of really big mistakes by Trevor Lawrence in the red zone, whether it's in interceptions or whatever. And those are just backbreakers when you get all the way down the field, get that far, and not only don't score, but give the ball over to the other team there.
Yeah, I talked about this last year with Jacksonville, and there's clearly more to it. But like, when you study the Jaguars roster offensively going into this year, how many spots are you like, well, they don't have a guy there, right? Like, you obviously Trevor Lawrence at quarterback and So we're a couple picks away here. I'll table this thought while we ponder some options here.
I think this is a really ugly area for for receivers. So it's usually kind of tight end and running back and whatever. I
Ray
think
Davis intrigues me.
Ray Davis, very, very intriguing, especially as Tyler Warren goes off the board here, who I kind of had my eye on.
Let's take Ray Davis, and I can tell you why I like the pick.
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Right. So let's go through the Bills offseason. Josh Allen, done. Extension, right? Greg Rousseau, extension, done, right? Khalil Shakir, extension, done. Christian Benford, extension, done. There might be a couple others that I've missed, and I apologize for those that I don't recall right off the top of my head. But the bottom line is the theme of the offseason, Terrell Bernard, extension, done. Bunch of guys getting deals done. And by the way, a lot of guys getting deals done very early. Buffalo telling us, hey, we want to keep these players around, and we're not messing around to do so. What's James Cook doing right now? Nothing, right?
He's around.
And what indications have we gotten that a deal is anywhere close to close?
It feels like they will not give in to James Cook. They maybe some incentives stuff. They might.
Have you seen what he wants? Do you know what he wants?
What is it, like 20 million or something? It's or 15.
I don't know that James has said it directly, like I want 20 million, but I remember his brother, Dalvin, I think it was during a playoff game, tweeting 20 million. Either it was 20 million per year or 20 million. So yeah, the inference that I have made from some social media activity is that the idea is to get $20 million a year, which, oh, by the way, I think would make him the highest paid running back in NFL history. Is there any reason why the Bills should be motivated to do that? Anyways, Ray Davis, if this thing lingers, and also thought like Ray Davis is good. He was good last year filling in for James, and fourth round pick out of Kentucky. Obviously, he filled in for James. It wasn't a lot, but is the next man up for stretches in that backfield. So, anyways, he has my attention.
And it feels like every time we get these holdouts from skill players, they just I don't know what the percentages are, but it feels like the large majority of the time they don't have a great season, right? It takes them a while. Like they've missed so much of training camp. It takes them a while to kind of ramp up. Maybe the team has lost a little bit of the faith that they have in them as a player. But by the way, yesterday, offensive coordinator for the Bills, Joe Brady, had a press conference, dropped this into the Coach Speak Index Discord, saying that Ray Davis is as conscientious as it gets. He wants to be a perfectionist. And then, quote, you can see him just kind of taking another step to his game, both in the run game and the pass game, which makes life exciting for me. And pretty good.
Not bad right there. Again, at the point where we were at with the ugly wide receiver layout, I'm cool with it.
There are some guys on the board who are available right now who I'd be very interested in. I'm not sure if one of them will make it to us, but
well, let's not reveal it in case.
Yeah,
Scott Mack 89 or Troy.
It's definitely Roth. Quentin Johnston.
Has to be. Yep. Or Jay Original. Hey, are you watching? Yep.
We really want him right here.
Yep. Definitely, no one should take him. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it.
QJ, please don't take QJ.
This is your warning, Jay Original.
How do you feel about Craft here?
Yeah, good with it. Baby Kittle.
Yeah, this is about a round and a half past ADP. Yeah. And I feel like we could stop there with him and Trey McBride.
I should have us covered well. Yep, wrap that position up.
Yeah, and we can really just peg running back. We'll take a quick look at our team here. Quarterback, Justin Fields and Trevor Lawrence. Running back, Devon Achane, RJ Harvey, Ray Davis. Wide receiver, Brian Thomas Jr., Travis Hunter, Jerry Jeudy, Darnell Mooney, Brandon Ayuk, Rashid Shaheed. And at tight end, some really big ADP values on Trey McBride and Tucker Kraft. How are you feeling about this team so far?
Looks like a winner to me. I don't know if we should just play out the season right now via simulation and just collect money.
Sim sim to end.
Let's do it, baby.
Give us that moolah. All right, 3 picks away, and some Roschon Johnson would have been pretty nice.
Yeah, it would have been fun right there.
Fallen to us a little bit of an ADP value on Austin Eckler. Rico Dowdle, also another guy who I think could see a good amount of work in Carolina. Don't think, obviously, he's going to be RB1 there over Chuba Hubbard, but we do get Davis calling both of them war daddies.
Who called them war daddies? Dave Canales?
Dave Canales. Yeah. Which I've heard war daddy about 4 players in the NFL. Matt LaFleur said it about Jaden Reed a couple of years ago. Sean McVay said it about Puka Nacua last year. And then this year, Dave Canales said it about Chuba Hubbard and Rico Dowdle.
That's actually good enough for me, truthfully, to take him here. And again,
all right.
I
made my case.
Yeah, so that was pretty good right there. Chuba is the man, and he will be very busy again this year. But again, we're 1 injury away from having again, think of this in redraft weekly rankings. What is, if Chuba's out, where does Rico Dowdle land in your weekly running back rankings? 18th? Something like that?
Yeah, top 24. I feel a good running back.
Yeah. He's just a good player, right? Like, for all the the talk this offseason about how the Cowboys need to add a running back, it's like they also had a guy who didn't even really get the job until 35% of the way into the season. Rushing for 1,000 yards. Yeah,
they talked before the season and early on in the season about, hey, this is running back by committee. We feel great about this running back room. And then Ezekiel Elliott washed way past his prime. Deuce Vaughn, too small.
What's the right way to describe Zeke? Like, what would be the other, like, what stage of washed was that? Was that like, I love when they show random segments of a guy's career where it's like, do you recall Karl Malone and the Jazz, Shaq with the Celtics? Like that, we're talking that level of washed for Zeke last year?
I would say tie-dye washed, where many, many years ago, this thing was in. It was cool to be associated with Ezekiel Elliott, and now not so much anymore. Field, a lot of people may be surprised to hear this, but you played tight end and linebacker in high school. You were a safety at Wesleyan University. What would Field Yates, the scout, have written about Field Yates, the player?
Reject. I had a very inglorious career in college. I think so. I started 1 game in my college career, and the reason why I started was because our 2 starting safeties missed a team meeting on Friday.
So there we go, Mr. Reliable. The best availability, or the best ability, is availability.
So I got a call into the office Friday afternoon, and it was like, "Hey, you're starting tomorrow. We got to punish these guys. Whatever. They were out for a quarter or something." And not a good athlete, decent instincts, but no, probably a guy who made more meaningful contributions on special teams than defense. But not to sound too much like a Harbaugh, but man alive, does football teach you a lot of great life lessons. We're thinking quarterback here, by the way. I saw you hit that quarterback tab again.
Just to look at what's available. Anthony Richardson is available if we want to take that upside and add him to Fields and Lawrence. Also, Romeo Doubs is in, Pat Bryant, Michael Wilson, all pretty good ADP values.
I think now. Doubs is the case, and here's the reason why. Let's take Doubs.
Yep.
This is best ball. He's going to have 3 random 2-touchdown games this year. It's part of the Romeo Doubs script. He's going to end the season. You're going to look at the raw numbers, and you're going to say, wow, Romeo Doubs had 61 catches for 812 yards and 8 touchdowns. Then you're going to go back and look at it, and it's going to be, in a matter of 3 games, he will have had 24 of those 61 catches for 362 yards and 6 touchdowns in 3 games. And you're going to, the rest of those games are going to be completely worthless. But those 3 weeks, man, he's got some serious week winning value.
Yeah, super hard worker, guy that Matt LaFleur is always talking about, like, this dude is just constantly on the chugs machine.
You think they're trying to make up for what happened last year, though? Like, the guy got suspended, right? Like, for like basically what I think we would call conduct detrimental to the team. You think that when they speak about him now, it's like we got to overcompensate and say literally the nicest things ever?
I mean, Matt LaFleur is fairly straightforward. Like, I think it was yesterday he was talking about Dobbs. I got to tell you, man, that when he scored that touchdown last year, coming back from that suspension, and all his teammates were just like hugging him and together in that was so cool. I really love seeing that.
Yep.
So if we do want to tack on a third quarterback, Tyler Shuck is available now and would pair with Rashid Shaheed. Looking at running back, Marshawn Lloyd, Blake Corum, Elijah Mitchell, Woody Marks.
Yeah, there's part of it. Let's just get the quarterback out of the way. We can just be done with that spot.
Let's do it.
It's tethered. I don't have great confidence here, but enough that we'll make the pick.
Maybe Shuck
should show
into something.
Maybe, yeah. He's athletic too. He can run. Like, this is not going to be a guy who has to. Like, there is an avenue to get some, not a ton, but some fantasy points with the legs there. He is a legit athlete.
Yeah, and all the injury history stuff seems to be all like fairly fluky, like broken collarbones, those sort of things. Not anything.
Non-throwing shoulder. It's not like I think if he played a game tomorrow, he would not feel held back in any way, shape, or form by physical things that have happened in the past.
Somebody in chat. Sorry. Go ahead.
Go for it. Let's see what happens.
Somebody in chat asking when you think best ball, or do you think best ball takes over redraft?
I don't think it does. Yeah, I like to see that it's making a lot of momentum. I don't think it does for this reason, is that I often think about fantasy football akin to the NCAA tournament, where while there's hardcores, there are people that like do their own bracketology and people that are like, pissed off because Kansas was a 3 and not a 4, even though like their quad 1 wins were fewer than whatever, Mississippi State's or something, right? Is that like me, who's a basketball fan and a college basketball fan casually, I get into it and I do a bracket and it's like all I care about for that 3-week stretch, right? Like I'm heavily invested in it. I think that best ball, which requires less work, obviously, than redraft, but like redraft is the kind of thing that like it's easy to explain to your buddy who works with you who's never heard of fantasy or never played fantasy football before, right? So, and there is something to be said for while I enjoy the lack of frustration over bad decision making in best ball during the season, there is something to be said for having to make those decisions too, like agonizing over, Adam Thielen or I don't even know who, whatever, insert random wide receiver, Chris Olave is something that people can relate to.
Mm-hmm.
But the best ball rise is real, right? It's coming in hot. That's for sure.
Yeah. That weekly torture of who do I put in my lineup? Who do I pick up from waivers is exhilarating. We're sadistic.
Yep.
With our fantasy football. We're gonna take a couple more shots here at running back room right now. Devon Achane, RJ Harvey, Ray Davis, Rico Dowdle. So a couple of guys who we feel good about, and then a couple of guys who are kind of possibly contingent values who might offer a few standalone weeks here. And this might be a spot where we want to make a bet on a guy like maybe a Miles Sanders being the RB1 where they are. Don't see a lot of
non-zero chance, right? I mean, he's the only guy on the board. If the season started tomorrow, where he plays, it's not clear that he's not the starter, right?
Correct. Yeah, they're still not sure if it's running back by committee, how it's going to shake out. I'm not a big believer in Javonte Williams. Like you said, Denver last year, tremendous offensive line, could not do anything.
Yep, I'm good with it.
All right, let's take Miles Sanders here, and then we'll take one more shot at running back when it comes.
Man, you just feel for a guy like Sanders, by the way, where it's like, I'm sorry, for Javonte, I mean for Sanders too, but Javonte Williams, where that was a serious knee injury a few years ago.
Yeah.
But man alive, is he talented. I remember his rookie season, he was sharing time with Melvin Gordon, and Gordon had this solid year. but there was a game, I think it might have been the COVID year, where Gordon was unavailable, whether it was because of injury or, that year, obviously a lot of sickness. I don't recall what it was, but Javonte, they played the Chiefs. It was like a Sunday night football game. And Javonte ended up as RB1 for the week. And you're like, there's the vision, right? Like he caught 7 passes, whatever, rushed the ball 18 times, found the end zone once or twice. And you're like, shit, this guy is as advertised. Like, how do they keep him not on ice, but how do they keep him as not the guy up to this point of the season? And then all of a sudden, one injury goes, changes everything, right? I mean, this guy's career feels different. We're looking for a random dart throw here at the end, huh?
Yeah, looking for a little dart throw here. Brashard Smith, Taj Brooks, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, Jordan James, Blake Corum, all guys I think could fit this team.
Yeah.
Any preference there?
Taj Brooks, I know Samaje Perine is there, but Chase Brown, I love him, but something happens there. Brooks might have a chance to become that next man up.
Let's go Brooks. I feel very good about Taj Brooks being the RB2 in Cincinnati. I know some are kind of waiting for further clarification on that, but when they've been asked about the running back room recently, they have not even mentioned Zach Moss's name. Yeah. Which seems like a big omission. Samaje Perine, we know who he is at this point in his career. Don't think he's going to be stealing a lot of work. Yeah. I do see this as kind of heavy Chase Brown. That's the usage that they've said that they want for him. First and second down runner. We'd like to bring somebody in to kind of take some of the load off, which they said that while Zach Moss on the roster. So again, not great for one Mr. Zach Moss.
It's a neck injury, right? Is he still is he even practicing yet or no?
Neck injury. I don't think he's out there yet.
Yeah. So that might be that one that you're just you just hope it's not,
Chris Carson.
Yeah. Can we talk about Chase Brown last year for a little bit?
I'm sorry, what's that?
Let's talk about Chase Brown here for a little bit.
Last year. Please.
There was a time where he handled it, and I lost track of the exact number, but it was like 78 straight running back opportunities for the Bengals. It was unbelievable. It was unlike any other running back, and we're in a world where Derrick Henry exists, and Christian McCaffrey has been peak of his powers in recent years. Now, it was the perfect storm, right? Injuries, the Bengals were basically in a must-win game for 2 months, and they needed him. Yeah. But to give him no relief whatsoever was astounding to me. And shout out to Chase Brown for how he held up.
Yeah, it was a Kyron Williams level workload that he saw in Cincy last year. Let's take a look here at our team.
All right.
Quarterback Justin Fields, Trevor Lawrence, Tyler Shuck. At running back, we have Devon Achane, RJ Harvey, Ray Davis, Rico Dowdle, Miles Sanders, Taj Brooks. At receiver, Brian Thomas Jr., Travis Hunter, Jerry Jeudy, Darnell Mooney, Brandon Ayuk, Rashid Shaheed, and Romeo Dobbs. And at tight end, Trey McBride and Tucker Kraft. How are you liking this team? I think this is
probably natural, but the wide receiver room is the most exciting part of the team for me. There's so many options there. So that's probably understandable that we have, the most optimism there. But yeah, into the wide receiver room here. Quarterback room intrigues me. I'm not certain any of those 3 guys is going to be very good week to week, but one of those 3 guys in a given week is going to be good enough, which is all we need, right? It's all we're looking for here. So, couple of pivot player teams for me. Pivot players for us is RJ Harvey. We need you, buddy. No pressure, but you're a rookie. You got fresh legs. Reminded me of Bucky Irving during the pre-draft process, which I know was a comp you probably heard. Here we go. Guarantee winner, baby. You heard a couple times. But man, you hear about players like big backs who run small, which was one of the, in some people's eyes, criticisms of Braylon Allen coming out of college. I'm sure you've seen the Braylon Allen weight room photos where you're like, this is like a defensive lineman playing running back, but where was the power and pop during his final season at Wisconsin? There's the opposite, which is the small backs that run big, Bucky Irving being a great example of that. RJ Harvey has some of that in him. He was fearless. He was running guys over, running through players during his final college season. So I have a lot of optimism. And I got to go back and check the sequence of it. I know the Broncos had a late second-round pick. They traded back. And then I think they traded back up to get RJ Harvey, if my memory is correct. Sometimes we overdo this kind of analysis, but Sean Payton had an idea of who he wanted. And we've seen him become very bullish on players throughout the pre-draft process. And those players, especially at running back, ending up working very, very well.
It makes so much sense that the Jags were interested in RJ Harvey, talking about how similar he looks in ways to Bucky Irving. And then we get the quote from Liam Cohen about Bashal Tutin, who they drafted and who.
What did he say? What I miss?
Well, he was talking about, well, first of all, that he's a home run hitter, right? From any spot on the field, he can score a touchdown, and that the missed tackles force behind the line of scrimmage was like very big for him. Like really loved that about him. I was like, okay, well, who does that remind you of from last year with the Bucs? It's Bucky Irving making all those guys miss when they think they have him for like a 5-yard loss and ends up in a 3-yard gain. So yeah, that again, that signal of they wanted RJ Harvey is pretty big. But let's talk about this Jacksonville backfield for
a shirt, by the way. Did we bury the lead here? I admit when I come on these streams, sometimes I'm looking out into La La Land. But you got
I got the Duval shirt. I made this.
You got to say it correctly.
Duval.
There we go. Even like the way you turn the face there is so good.
A lot of people don't turn when they're saying Duval. You gotta do the like little sassy turn to camera. Yeah, these are available on the Coach Speak Index merch shop along with some other great stuff. Yeah, man. The Jacksonville backfield, they're all currently going in the triple digits in fantasy drafts. Finding the right one of these 3 or 4. No LaQuint Allen erasure here. But finding the right guy could be one of the keys in fantasy this season, especially at an ADP so late. What did you think about Bashal Tutin when you were scouting him? What are your early thoughts on how this backfield might shake out?
I had him early 4th round grade. He went in the 4th round, so it was consistent with where I thought he was deserving to go. He had a game against Boston College last year. I think it was the single game rushing record for Virginia Tech. It certainly felt like it when you're watching it because he had he had a lot of carries in that game, but it felt like he needed about 5 to reach 200 yards. He is one of the better home run hitters in a very, very deep draft class. And I think that coaches are going to be enamored by that kind of stuff in the pre-draft process. Scouts are doing this work from, they're already well into 2026 work. Coaches jump into this process, and give me a minute here to explain this, like late, very late, like maybe even like after free agency level of late. And I'm not saying all these coaches are this way. I don't know exactly how it worked out in Jacksonville. But it doesn't surprise me that we've heard a lot of optimistic things about Tutin from coaches, because if you only had a short period of time to watch all these guys and you're watching a small sample size of them, not too many guys' best moments, biggest plays were more impressive than Tutin's. Compact runner, so I don't know that he is built for this 20 to 22 carry lifestyle. That being said, it doesn't seem like Jacksonville needs him to do that, but he is the best home run hitter on this roster, at least amongst the running backs, right away. I think this ends up being like too committee-ish for anybody. Like someone's going to be a little bit of a value. I'm not totally certain that we're going to look back and be like, wait, why did Travis Etienne not go 28th this year instead of going 120th? So it's an intriguing backfield, but I tend to think that like one guy emerging as a dominant fantasy star is less likely than 3 guys all contributing enough to be annoying to each other for fantasy purposes.
Yeah, you can definitely see that when you look at the Bucs offense last year. It took them so long to give the majority of the workload to Bucky Irving. It was a lot of Rachaad White early, and then it was a lot of this pony personnel where they have Rachaad White and Bucky Irving on the field a lot. And with Liam Cohen talking about Travis Etienne, we can use them in screens, we can use them in jet sweeps. Well, that's a lot of the stuff that we saw with the Bucs last season. It's just such an interesting puzzle there because you know that James Gladstone is tuned into the efficiency metrics of players. So you look at ETN, and it's not impressive what we've seen from him. Tank Bigsby, just an absolute zero in the pass game. But as a runner, he does exactly what Liam Cohen likes, which is the fast to and through the hole, breaking tackles, that sort of thing. And then we have that with Bashal Tootin as well, the missed tackles force. But he comes into the league with a fumbling problem and fumbles on his very first live carry in the NFL. So, I think maybe the likeliest outcome is what you outlined, that maybe it's just like all three of these guys. Like, they don't care. The coaches don't care about fantasy. They just want, hey, what's going to work the best? What's going to keep the defense on their heels the most, and who's going to produce the most for us? And when you have those guys who do different things well, then maybe you just use all of those guys.
Yeah, and I'd say this too, like, fantasy football is an emotional game. So when you draft players, to me, part of it is like, what am I expecting out of this player, right? Like, there are guys who at the end of the season, you draft high and they'll have okay production throughout the course of the year. But they aren't the reason why you lose your league, but they also aren't the reason why you win your league. And that's frustrating, right? So with the Jaguars, okay, so if you're taking any of these guys, ADP again, redraft leagues is like 110, 120 and beyond. Like, the one who's not going to bother you at all is going to be Tank Bigsby, because no one, I don't think anybody in the right mind is saying, like, I'm drafting Tank Bigsby because I think there's a 50% chance he's the guy that leads the way in total touches for the Jaguars. Like, you're hoping for, he plays a little bit and he vultures 8. They just decide that on the goal line and in, Tank Bigsby is our guy, right?
Yeah.
For Tootin, it's like, you're getting him a little bit later than ETN, but the idea is this is the shiny new object. ETN was a little bit disappointing, as we have already discussed last year. A lot disappointing, I should say. ETN is the one where you're still like, there's still a chance, right? So it's almost like you can remove Tank Bigsby from the equation. Which of those three guys has a credible chance to be a lead back in what could be a much improved offense? To me, it's clear that if it's going to be any of those three, it's going to be ETN or Tootin. So Bigsby, I'm not saying you can't draft the guy, but I just think, like, your expectations are going to be closest to what you draft him for with Tank Bigsby, but also, to me, the least amount of upside clearly out of those three.
And it feels like with ETN, you also maybe have the out of he gets traded, possibly.
Possible, yeah, yep.
Like, maybe, I don't know, 10, 15% chance that he gets traded. Somewhere
the Jaguars would have to eat some money, which is they've shown that, right? Gabe Davis and yada yada yada.
Yeah.
Ingram and Christian Kirk, right? Like, they've been willing to take the hit this year. ETN, like, what if the Cowboys middle of training camp are like, you know what? Turns out all of them aren't very good. Miles Sanders and Jaden Blue is he's a superb athlete. Jaden Blue is their 5th round pick out of Texas. Problem is, he had a major fumbling issue that caused him to be on the bench too often down the stretch for Texas. If you go back and look at his game log from last year, there are a few monster games. And I like, this is going to sound lofty and ridiculous, but there's some early season touches where you're like, this guy looks like Alvin Kamara in the open field. That being said, fumbling issues, reliability issues kept him off the field late in the season to the same extent that he was on the field earlier in the year. So, like, the Cowboys would be an obvious one. Injuries elsewhere could be an obvious one, right? Like, there are teams that, they're one injury away from being really, really hammered.
Yes. Field, you majored in psychology at Wesleyan. What would Freud say about people who play fantasy football?
Make better decisions? No, that's a good question. I don't know if psychology has helped me very much in fantasy. I think it's probably helped me, like, in the world, like, understand where people's brains are and how they operate and things of that nature. I think as long as people remember that, like, what we're doing, and I guess, you certainly can make a lot of money off of it, right? But I try to think of fantasy football as something that, and this is the kind of thing I always say in June, and then I forget by about October. If you allow fantasy football to be additive to your life and not take away from your general enjoyment, it's worth it. If you allow it to take away from your general enjoyment, it can get things can get a little bit dicey there.
Absolutely. So there's something that I watch all these pressers. I listen to everything that these coaches and general managers, OCs are saying about players. And there's something that I haven't heard anyone draw the kind of comparison, but a lot of the things that we heard about Jaden Daniels last year during the pre-draft process, and then especially after he was drafted by the Commanders, was his mindset. Just like what an absolute, just stone cold killer this
Can
guy.
I guess where this is going?
Yes, please.
Cam Ward?
Yes.
Tell you what, I was talking about this. Yeah. Talking about this with the scouting buddy a couple of days ago. It's just I've come to learn a little bit more about the intangibles for Cam Ward and about the kind of human he is. And again, you're making the evaluation, not just the prospect, but the human as well. Like, it's not good. It's not great. It's elite. Gives me some confidence. I do a show. It's obviously I work for ESPN, but I do a show as well that I interview some people in the world of sports, a lot of NFL GMs.
Field Talk?
Yeah, Field Talk. Yeah. And
sure.
we had Mike Borgonzi, the Titans GM, on it recently. And he was very open about Cam. And it was good stuff there. So if anybody is inclined, go just YouTube Field Talk Pod and you'll find it there. I think there's some real stoicism to Cam Ward that I think is a good thing. This is grasping at straws, and I acknowledge that. But it resonated with me, and I talked to some football people that agree with this assessment. I have nothing. I have no, like, Cam Ward, when I saw him in the green room, which is where I was on night one of the NFL draft, if you saw him and his family there, you'd have no idea that he was about to go number one overall. And they obviously knew, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're just sitting there. Like, they look like they were waiting in the lobby for an appointment. Just very even keeled.
Just
right?
Yeah.
Now, am I sitting here telling you that if Cam Ward was jumping, bouncing off the walls because he was about to get become the number one pick overall, would I be mad about it? Of course not. My point is that he's so steady all the time and the roster is not as good in Tennessee as it was in Washington. And I think that's, to me, I believe that to be true. But my optimism for Cam Ward's grown since the draft. And it was, I like the player a lot coming into the draft, but it's grown since the draft came to a conclusion.
Yeah, the mental part of the game for a quarterback is just so big, and people sometimes don't factor that in or think about that. But I mean, having this kind of mindset, I believe, like it's not, hey, anyone with a great mindset can be a great quarterback. That's not how it works. But when you have the talent and the skill set, and then you do bring that mindset to the table, that stoicism, that just like stone cold killer, where whatever happens, I'm not going to get too high, I'm not going to get too low, I'm going to be even keeled, and just nothing is going to affect me. You can still be locked in and still be, cool and calm. And I think I know the Titans like really, really love that about him because they can't stop talking.
Can't stop talking about it. I know. Yeah.
Totally. So I'm really, really pulling for Cam Ward. Field, you also worked as a beat writer for the New England Patriots. Back in the day, still have some connections there. I would figure. Any insight on what they might be envisioning for that backfield split between TreVeyon Henderson and Ramondre Stevenson?
So this is more my common sense than it is like, inside reporting here. But TreVeyon Henderson, people know obviously that he was at Ohio State for a while. Highly touted prospect out of Virginia. Like, this guy arrived. People knew he was the truth. The best version of TreVeyon Henderson came this past season. And I believe the reason why is not just the Chip Kelly scheme, but also the fact that he was lightning and Quinshon Judkins was thunder, as opposed to him trying to be both in one. I don't know that, I think if I were to draft, to build a football team right now, I think I would take Quinshon Judkins over Ramondre Stevenson. But Ramondre is more Quinshon than he is TreVeyon, right? I think there's a chance that to begin the season, the mindset is thunder, lightning. Thunder being Ramondre, lightning being Henderson. I thought Ramondre was super disappointing last year. I just didn't think he ran nearly as effectively. as he did years prior. The Patriots paid him a boatload of money last summer. They made a lot of ill-fated decisions last summer, obviously. That being said, what I do think is interesting is there a chance that Henderson is this year's Bucky Irving? Right, you were talking about this like at the beginning of the year with Rashad White. He's playing a lot for Tampa, and then they, kind of a little bit more of Bucky Irving week in, week out. Henderson's explosive. Now, I thought he was at his best last year in part because he wasn't needed to carry the football 20 to 25 times consistently. That being said, could this be like where Tony Pollard was? Think back to Tony Pollard and Zeke Elliott when it was going really well. The Cowboys masterfully deployed Tony Pollard. It wasn't that Zeke didn't have a role. It was that the far more high leverage plays went to Tony Pollard. Wouldn't surprise me if Henderson evolves into that role. And if nothing else for the Patriots this year, they have the easy buttons available on offense. Last year, every point was earned. And it was a lot of like field goals from 48 yards, right? Like this year, there might be a play where it's like, hey, we throw Kyle Williams a screen pass and he turns it into a 42-yard gain because he's got, excellent speed and he's like lightning quick. So Patriots offense, I think, will trend up this year. Henderson, though, intrigues me way more than way more than Stevenson. Like if you told me one of those guys comes back at the end of the year as a top, like if it's week 16 and we're ranking him as a top 15 play, to me, it's far more likely that it's Henderson than Stevenson. Far more.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, reportedly they passed up on some very good offers for teams who wanted to trade up into the 38th pick, and for them to turn that down and take a running back there when they had a lot of other needs.
They did, yeah.
To address. I feel that in and of itself, right? We can get words from coaches and whatever, but actions still speak louder than words. So when we see them invest that kind of draft capital, when they had really good offers on the table to trade out and so many needs, I think that definitely says a lot. I want to ask you about one more situation, and that's the Indianapolis Colts quarterback situation, which I'm sure we will all be talking about quite a bit this season. Any forecasting that can be done here?
I think Daniel Jones starts the season. I do. Not that it was this like unbelievable amount of money, but it was enough of an investment that the team clearly feels like he's got a real chance to become their season-long starter. Anthony Richardson might be one where the Colts just kind of raise their hand and say, the best thing you can do when you make an error is admit the error, right? Tantalizing nobody, and I'll wear this egg on my face for as long as I'm doing this, was more intrigued by Anthony Richardson last preseason than I was. I thought there was a chance we were going to talk about him as the second coming of Jalen Hurts, maybe even Josh Allen. And that was not the case at all. He was a disappointment of the highest order last year. But I think the more important point is this. I don't think either one of them starts all 17 games. I don't think either one of them is a favorite to start the season in 2026 for Indianapolis. So I think this could be one of those that looks kind of like last year, where you got a lot of leverage out of the Shane Steichen content, where it was, hey, Anthony is being replaced by Joe, and this is it's not temporary, it's for the rest of the season, and then whatever it was, 4 weeks later, it was back to Anthony, right? So that's a fade for non-best ball purposes for me.
Yeah, general manager Chris Ballard said that I think both of these guys help us at some point during the season, which is it's not a lot of confidence that you're expressing.
The old Bill Parcells adage, he said back in the day, when you have two quarterbacks, you have none.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Before I let you go, I'm sure a lot of people watching right now are interested in getting into the industry, whether it's fantasy or just sports in general. What is the best piece of advice that you have gotten that you think would be very instrumental to these people?
I'll give you two. The first thing is that in order to make compelling arguments, you have to believe them. If you don't actually feel strongly about what you're saying, it's going to come across that way, and people are going to see right through it. So if you want to you can make any argument you want. If you want to say that Dak Prescott deserves to be the number one quarterback drafted in fantasy football this year, and you bring your facts, I'm not going to tell you you're wrong. It's possible, right? I mean, A couple years ago, Dak was humming, right? But that's a contrarian take, to put it lightly, so you better have good logic behind it. If you're doing it for clicks, then it's not going to pan out for you. Second thing is this. It's this big, expansive field. There's a lot of competition. I'm just telling you, the best way to not have it work out is to not believe in yourself. It's the easiest way. It's the easiest way to count yourself out is to count yourself out, right? A lot of people want to be doctors. A lot of people want to be lawyers. A lot of people want to be, you name it, sports agents, fantasy football analysts. If you don't believe that you have a chance to become that, I guarantee you it won't happen. So fight for yourself, believe in yourself, and you've got a much better chance than someone whose confidence waxes and wanes depending on what day of the week it is.
Excellent advice. Thank you, Field, so much for joining us today. Had a real blast drafting this team with you and just chopping it up with you. Love to do this again sometime in the future. Please let everybody know what you've got going on, including Field Talk podcast.
Yeah, a lot of everything funnels through the social media channels. I can tell you that, but we're getting grinding away on the preparation for the upcoming fantasy season, 2026 draft content, general NFL analysis. So if you're over there on Twitter, Field Yates, the Bird app, I'll be there hanging out, waiting for you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you to everybody who hung out here with us today. Got another stream in 14 minutes.
Oh,
Justin Herzig of Establish the Run and Best Ball Mania 1 winner. So
we'll get some food, brother. Get some food, take a leak, and you'll be back and ready to rock and roll.
There we go. All right, everybody. Peace.